even when I'm down. Got my head in the clouds and my feet on the ground. I got big dreams, gonna make them true.
And welcome to the Genius Lab, where we make your dreams come true, and we have a lot of fun. So today, I'm going to get deeper into the 5 steps for claiming your power. One of the things that I seem to be running into is as people are reading my new book, Release Your Shit and Reclaim Your Power, which you can get at tobychristensen.com. I'm getting a lot of feedback like this seems really simple and really effective, and I'm not sure that I get it completely because it seems too easy. And you know what? It is easy. It is really, really simple to reclaim your power. Sometimes releasing your shit is much harder than reclaiming your power. But once you follow the process in the book, or if you come to the workshop, you get a whole new perspective, right? It doesn't have to be hard. And I think this is one of the things that there's so many coaches out there that have these complicated and very expensive things that you need to do and all this shit you need to buy. And I'm just like, no, it doesn't have to be that hard. It's really, really simple. It's really does not require any kind of bullshit or what, as I refer to it as dumb fuckery, any kind of trickiness. It's really about awareness and just paying attention, okay? So I want to talk to you about the 5 steps to reclaiming your power, step 1, okay? And that is basically identifying your triggers and your buttons, okay? In other words, you always hear the phrase, man, that guy really pushes my buttons, okay? When somebody pushes your buttons, they're showing you something about yourself that you either don't like or you have not committed to acknowledging or owning, okay? And so it's good. When somebody pushes your buttons, it's not about them. It's about you. It's so, if I have a friend that's like 5'2", and if somebody calls him Shorty, they're in for a fight. Because that's something that he's very self-conscious about. If somebody calls me Shorty, I look at him like, it doesn't even faze me because it's not my issue, but it is an issue for him. So it's whatever you get triggered about, whatever pushes your buttons is not about the person who's pushing your buttons, it's about you. So when you realize that, the thing that's cool is you have all these beautiful indicators in your life. Every time you get pissed off at somebody because they push your buttons, look in the mirror and go, why is this affecting me? What am I holding on to that I'm allowing to activate me in a negative way? What am I allowing to take my energy, and how can I reclaim it? Okay? So the simple awareness is like huge. What triggers you? What pushes your buttons? I had a real funny thing happen. I get triggered sometimes around people who have a lot of money because I've had some very successful times in my life and some very not so successful times in my life. And the way I was raised, money was a big issue. And so that's something I've been working through. And one of the funniest things happened, and this is sort of a subtle thing. It's not as direct as like, hey, Shorty, or hey, ugly, or whatever. It's a friend of mine who's a very successful entrepreneur, got a new car. And he's like, hey, Tobe, I want to come and show you my new car. And I'm like, oh, great. I love cars. So let's see. And he comes driving up in this beautiful 911 GTS. And I really struggled with my feelings. I'm like, and it wasn't that I was super happy for him. I was really glad that he could afford a $130,000 car or whatever it was. And at the same time, I'm telling myself, you fucking loser. And I was very nice to him, and I went in the house and I wanted to cry or commit suicide or some crazy thing. I wasn't reacting in a very helpful and positive way. And I realized, wow, I'm really getting triggered by this because of how I feel about myself. So how can I shift this feeling towards forgiveness of myself? How can I reclaim hope for getting the success that I would like to have. And if that's about money, great. If it's about maybe understanding different values, I certainly am not willing to do some of the things that he did in order to get that kind of money. And that's because we have different core values. He didn't do anything immoral or terrible. It's just, he loves to work 80, 90 hours a week, and it doesn't matter if he's around his family and so on and so forth. To me, I have different core values, and I haven't figured out how to live in accordance with those core values and make a ton of money. So I'm working on it, though. So that's the thing that triggered me. And what was so cool, when I realized it, I only stayed triggered for a very, very short period of time. It was like, wow, I see this is still alive and well in the Toby psyche. And so it was a really positive, healing thing for me to then go in, work with myself on forgiveness, work on myself for reclaiming my values and reclaiming my mission. And so and realizing everything's temporary. Okay. A friend of mine, he owed the IRS a tremendous amount of money, and he was due in a short period of time. He said, you know what? I don't worry about it anymore. He said, money is like the tide. It comes in and it goes out, but it always comes back in again. And he's true. It's true. So things change, things shift. And as we align with our core values, as we reclaim our power, we have the ability to influence that in our lives in a more proactive way. So step one, what triggers you? What pushes your buttons? Step two, identify what your reaction is when you get triggered. So, my friend David calls this the trip. What is the trip that you go on? Back in the 70s and the 80s, when someone would get all upset, they're like, dude, you're tripping, man, quit tripping. And the truth is, when you get triggered, you go on a trip. So what is when you get triggered, when somebody pushes your buttons, what do you do? Do you get pissed? Do you get sad? Do you get aggressive? Do you withdraw? There's always a particular people, usually based on their personality, is how they respond. I have friends that are very what can we say? They hold their cards very close to their chest, and when they get pissed off, you never know unless you know them. Okay, and we'll get into that later. But so think about it. Think about, what is your trip? What are the trips you go on? Because sometimes you don't even realize you're triggered until you realize that you're on the trip. Okay? So sometimes you automatically just start being reactive to a particular situation. You don't realize you're triggered until all of a sudden you realize, oh shit, I'm in a terrible mood. I feel like shit. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be seen. And this is not like me. Okay? So what am I pissed off about, or what am I triggered by? What buttons got pushed? And so when you understand how you respond, the other thing that's really powerful about this is that you can, when you know what your trip is, you can often understand your button more completely. And when somebody pushes your button, you don't even go on the trip. You're like, oh, I get this. I know what's happening now. I got a less than thing coming up, and I'm not going to let that take me out today. So it's really a powerful skill to hold this awareness and be able to not respond, to be able to not have this thing have control over you. It's really awesome. And one way that we can find out about our trip and about our buttons getting pushed is step 3. Be aware of what happens to your body when your buttons get pushed. If you've ever watched professional poker, or maybe you play around, there's a thing called a tell. And it's a very common term for a behavior that indicates either stress or jubilation. And it's like a player, when they're dealt a particular card or a particular hand, for example, a player might nod his head to the right when he's perplexed because he's been dealt a bad hand. Or another player might tap his cards on the table when he has a good hand. So knowing what your tell is. One guy that I used to play with would start playing with his chips. He would start flipping his chips when he was getting ready to make a kill. So you knew he had a good hand if he started playing with his chips. He didn't even realize he was doing it. It was just like a thing that it was like a reaction. So that's a person's tell. Well, learn your own tells. Like what I know about myself is when I get triggered, I'm not an aggressive, when I'm driving down the when I'm driving down the freeway and somebody pulls in front of me and I get pissed off, I might start yelling. But basically when I really get triggered, I go quiet, I go in, my shoulders slump forward, my head goes down slightly, and I bend slightly forward at the waist. And I breathe really shallow. So every once in a while I'll have to take a nice big deep breath. So when I'm in that deep breath stage, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. What am I triggered by? Something's not right here because my body language is not, it's atypical. It's usually I stand up straight, chest out, shoulders back. I'm a confident, pretty confident guy. And so when I don't have that posture, and when I realize that my breath is not strong, that it's shallow, that I'm every once in a while having to take a deep breath to recharge the oxygen, I know that my body is telling me that something is not right. And so it was really funny. I had a friend over who's a fellow musician. I have a recording studio, and I have all my amplifiers lined up and guitars hanging on the walls. And I bought this new amp, and I said, "Hey man, come and check out my new amp." And he's like, "Oh wow," he comes over and he's all excited for me about getting this new amp. And then while we're talking about it, he says, "Yeah, I have this other amp. It's really rare. It's handmade by this particular guy, and blah 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 blah." Now, he wasn't trying to outdo me. He was just simply sharing in the excitement of cool amps, because I know this guy really well, and he's not a braggart. He's not a kind of guy that tries to outdo someone else. But what I noticed as soon as he talked about this amp and how rare it was and how expensive it was, I noticed my chest kind of collapsing. And what was interesting is that I didn't feel emotionally triggered. And I didn't go on a trip like I'm not good, or not consciously anyway, but my body responded to it. By knowing what my tell is, I knew that I was at least setting up to go on a trip and respond to my buttons being pushed. And so it was really important to understand that, which of course brings us to number 4. How do you turn it around? And so the biggest mistake most people make when they get triggered, whether they actually know they get triggered, whether they respond by going on a certain trip, "Oh, I'm a loser piece of shit," or "That guy is a criminal and that's the only way that he's been able to get his success," or whatever kind of shit you go through, right? Whatever trip you go on. And then you realize your tell. Okay, so then how do you turn it around? So in that example, this guy had, I was so proud of my amp, and then he had a much better one. And so then how do you turn it around? The biggest mistake people make is they try and ignore the thing that's triggering them and turn it around from, "I want to fucking punch this person in the face," to "Kumbaya, oh, I love them, they're my brother or sister," or whatever. Okay? No, don't even go there, because it's not going to work. That's just that's bullshit fuckery. And I've had some new age friends, "Oh, just put them in love and light." I don't feel like fucking love and light when I'm pissed off and triggered. So to turn it around for me is like, for example, Mr. GTS drives up, and I immediately go into loser mode, right? I'm a loser. I'm a horrible business person, and my life is a complete waste of time because I don't have a 911 GTS. Well, I'm probably not going to go, well, I can have a 911 GTS if I wanted to, blah, blah, blah. Do some kind of stupid thing. Or, he's so cool and is such a good guy, he deserves it. Or any kind of bullshit like that. The bottom line is, hey, you know what? I don't have this thing now. If I really want it, I can set a goal to go get it. And is this in alignment with my core values? There's a lot of places you can go that's not so extreme. I always go to the me place. Look at how I can be different and what I can change in my life in order to not get triggered, not go on a trip, not have my body chemistry altered, and I can stay in a good place. Okay? Which leads us to step 5, and the final one is training. Okay? When a Navy SEAL goes on a mission, they have trained doing that mission hundreds and hundreds of times over and over and over in a simulated environment. So one of the things that you can do once you get a handle on this stuff is you can begin to train. Like if I know I'm going to a place where I would most likely get triggered. For example, we have a charity called Hear the Hope. And if we're going to a fundraiser and it's at the Four Seasons, I know that I'm going to see a lot of really cool cars. I'm going to see a lot of people in designer clothes, really cool, expensive watches. And, everybody puts on the show when they go to the fundraisers, right? So when I know that I'm heading into that territory and I know I'm going to get less than a trigger, and because I don't have the latest couture Versace suit or whatever I might get weird about, the thing that you can do is train. So I know that I get triggered, da-da-da-da-da. So what I do, instead of seeing someone better than me when I see somebody with a $50,000 watch or a $400,000 car, what I do is I see donors. Wow, isn't this awesome that people in this income range have taken on a love for the work that we do, that they have come, and they clearly are showing that they have the resources to help us out. And it completely changes the way that I respond to them and the way that I respond internally. So check it out. Enjoy this podcast. Listen to it again. Look at what are your triggers? What are your trips? Where do you go? What's your tell? How do you turn it around? How do you train? Really begin to bring your awareness towards how you want to be by examining how you are and looking at what the gap is between the two. Have fun with this. Enjoy it. And keep looking up.